We okay to go? And sorry, can I get Chris and Richard to keep your video on during the whole meeting? That helps us out immensely for the production. So Chris Marshall and Richard Hawley, if you can keep your video on the whole time, and that way we'll have a management presence in the room, because I will be turning this video off shortly. Thank you. Yes, we're going to do that like we did last.
I guess we're good to go. We're live on YouTube, so at this time we'll call the meeting to order. And could I have a motion to adopt the agenda for today? Moved by Jason, second by Kathleen Seymour Fagan. All those in favor? That's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Yes, Mike Barkwell?
Yeah, you have to speak into your mic.
Just speak into your, and I'll...
Okay, I'm declaring a pecuniary interest on 3.2 as I work for the owners to buy the adjacent property that's part of this rezoning request.
Thanks for that, Michael. So at this time, I'd like to announce the members of our committee today. There's Mike Barkwell, Councillor Andrew Vail, Councillor Seymour Fagan, Mayor Andy Latham, Jason Willick, Councillor Ron Ashmore has joined us today as well. Joel will be working with us, and I'm Pat O'Reilly. As we go into the public meeting, I just want to remind everybody, as we go through the reports and the open meeting, these are just recommendations. And these recommendations will be going to the August 20th council meeting. That's the August 20th council meeting. That's when they will be going, these recommendations that come out of our agenda today. So at this point, we'll get right into our agenda. It could be fairly lengthy. So the first one is a report from Richard Hawley, an application to amend the Oak Ridges Moraine. Richard, you're up.
Good afternoon, members of committee and public. This application has been submitted by Woodland Hills Community Subdivision in Bethany. There's two parts to the application. One is to amend the Oak Ridges Moraine and the Township of Mann Rezoning bylaws to harmonize the development standards to permit 5 lots to develop. The zoning bylaw runs right through the middle of these lots, so I will be speaking to that a little bit further. The second part of the application is a zoning bylaw amendment to decrease the lot area on 5 lots fronting on Country Place in order to accommodate a municipal stormwater management block. And this would replace the commercial block that's along Ski Hill Road between Russellwood Avenue and Country Place with a stormwater management pond and residential lots. The application notice for the application was submitted to all landowners within 120 meters, and a sign was posted on the Ski Hill Road frontage. So the application has been in process for quite some time. The subdivision originally goes back to the late 1980s. And has proceeded through a number of phases of an agreement. The latest one being in 2000, and that's the agreement that we're working from. So the first part of the proposal is really a technical amendment to deal with the Oak Ridges Moraine and Manvers zoning issue. Joel, could I get you to go to Appendix C, I think, to the next? Yes, that one. So when the Oak Ridges Moraine zoning bylaw was put in place, the edge of the Oak Ridges Moraine area is defined through the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. And that line is absolute. Now, the line of the Oak Ridges Moraine edge just follows along, and it doesn't necessarily care about future lot areas or lots. So in this instance, you can see where the Oak Ridges Moraine line sort of goes through. So the grayed out area is the area that's subject to the Oak Ridges Moraine zoning bylaw. And the other white portions of those lots are the lots that are affected by the Township of Manvers zoning bylaw. So when I refer to harmonization between the two zoning bylaws, what we have to do is we have to basically say that the line between the Manvers zoning bylaw and the Oak Ridges Moraine zoning bylaw does not exist. And also we have to harmonize the standards. The standards are relatively similar, but there are a few differences between the standards. So we just have to basically take the most stringent standard and apply them. But I don't suspect there's going to be a lot of problems in dealing with that. The second part of the amendment deals with is based on a servicing issue. Joel, could you go back to the previous appendix? Yes. So if you can take a look at the proposed subdivision plan here, the proposed M plan, there is a stormwater block that goes along the back lots on Country Place. And that is a requirement now, a city requirement to have any stormwater conveyance blocks that they be transferred to the city as opposed to running as easements over the back end of lots. The city prefers to own the land. That way we can go in and maintain it as we need to. That block, it's a bit of an L-shaped block. It then flows into a block that's along Ski Hill Road. That's where the stormwater management pond will be located. There's also an access to that pond from Country Place as well. The reason for the requirement for the stormwater infrastructure is this subdivision was basically approved a number of years ago. Standards have changed, and because the lots have not been registered, we are now required by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to require stormwater management ponds. So this stormwater pond has to be located there. This area along Ski Hill Road was actually a commercial block within the existing approval. So we have to rezone that front part from commercial to a combination of zones to allow for that stormwater management facility to be there. Because the commercial block is no longer there, there's land left over, so it's proposed to be converted into 3 residential lots. So with respect to the policies, parental policies, the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan is in effect on part of the lots on Horizon Court. The application conforms to the policies in the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. The proposal also conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe as it directs development to settlement areas and provides for efficient growth. It's also including stormwater management facilities now that incorporate low impact development standards. Similarly, the proposal also conforms to the provincial policy statement. The application also conforms to the City of Kawartha Lakes Oak Ridges Moraine policy area. as well as the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan. One of the issues, comments I had for the Hamlet policies is they generally require a minimum lot area of 0.4 hectares. In this case, we're going to be creating a number of undersized lots that range between 0.338 hectares and 399 hectares. However, we generally feel that the proposal does conform with the policies in that there has been engineering support provided by the engineer to support the reduction of the lot sizes. As indicated, the zoning bylaw will need to be amended. Both zoning bylaws will need to be amended to accommodate the proposal. The application also aligns with the city's strategic plan by providing new opportunities for residents and provide growth in our hamlet areas. It aligns with our healthy environment priorities by constructing new stormwater management facilities. The application was circulated to various agencies for review. No agencies had any concerns with the proposal. However, subject to any possible comments from the public, we would respectfully request at this time that the application be referred back pending any public comments. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Richard. Would the applicant, Mr. Kerr, would you wish to speak to this application?
I would simply say that the report that Mr. Hawley has brought forward is quite comprehensive, which we support, and that our engineer, Steve Clark of WSP, is standing by if you have any engineering questions for him. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mr. Kerr, and Mr. Clark has checked in. If we do have any questions, I'll go ask the committee first of all if you have any questions of the author of the report or of the applicant. Mayor Letham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple, if you'll bear with me. I guess for Richard, in the second paragraph of the background report, and this is just for my clarification, it says the Oak Ridges Moraine zoning bylaws are based on the area limits provided through the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. These limits are absolute and cannot be changed or amended to reflect existing lot patterns. And then the next line down, it says the owner has submitted an application to the city to amend the Oak Ridges Moraine zoning bylaw. So can you just clarify that for me? They seem to be contradictory statements.
Certainly, Mayor Letham. So the limits of the Oak Ridges Moraine plan cannot be amended. What we are amending, though, is we're amending the zoning provisions. So let me just go back and see. I think it's the in the Oak Ridges Moraine zoning bylaw, the portion of those 5 lots that's within the Oak Ridges Moraine zoning bylaw they're zoned RR1-S6. So we're not amending the limits of the plan. We're just amending the zoning provisions within the Oak Ridges Moraine portion of those lots so that they align with the Manvers side of the zoning so that development can actually happen. Because there is a zoning limit that goes through, under zoning, the zoning limits act like property lines. So we have to get rid of that provision. And we also have to make sure that for ease of development, that the development regulations on the Manvers side and on the Oak Ridges Moraine side align so that there's a clear understanding of what the development regulations are. I hope that answers the question.
It does, thank you. And I guess that's why those 5 lots will have split zoning, is that correct?
To Mayor Letham, yes, they will have the split zoning, but the zoning provisions will speak to each other.
Thank you. And then my final question, if I can, Mr. Chair, on the reduce lots. You say some of the lots are going to be a little bit reduced in size, which is no issues, but will the buildings that go on those reduced lots still have to meet the standard setbacks when they apply for a permit?
Yes, that's correct. There is enough lot area to accommodate a fairly substantial home as well as well and septic. It has been reviewed by our Part 8 septic inspector, and Ms. Elmhurst has no concerns with the reduced lot sizes.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the committee. Anybody further questions? Anyone from the public wish to speak to this application? Anyone from the public wish to speak to this application? Was there anybody registered, Joel?
I only have Steve Clark on there
Yeah.
and Donald and Jeffrey Kerr for right now.
Yeah, and they're the consulting and speaking of the application. Anyway, so we're going to do each report as printed as comes forward. So there's a recommendation in there. Is anybody, Mayor Letham?
I'll give you a recommendation that the report be received, and that based on on what I'm hearing and no comments outstanding, that the bylaw go forward to council for approval, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the approval of this application.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Vail. Further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. So that's not going to be referred back. That's going forward to council on the August 20th meeting. The next application is the application for the Woodland, this would be for Woodland Hills Community Planning application. No, Ian Walker for the Village of Fenland Falls official plan, and Mike Barkwell has declared a conflict of interest on this. So do you want to go ahead, Ian?
Okay. Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee. So this application for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applies to 3 properties. 2 of the properties are in the former Village of Fenland Falls. The 3rd property being the larger property where the current home hardware store is in the former township of Fenland Township. And the official plan amendment only applies to the development on the 2 properties within the former Village of Fenland Falls. So it's an amendment to the Fenland Falls official plan to change the designation from residential to commercial, which would allow for this proposed development expansion. As you can see up there on the presentation on the screen, this is the proposed addition to the home hardware. It shows the existing building there, the existing building footprint with a substantial addition to it, which extends out to the north and east. And the 2 properties are within kind of the triangle piece at the eastern part of the property there. They are the current residential ones. So there's an air photo that just shows the neighborhood and the area around there. The properties are right on the boundary of the former Village of Fenland Falls. So you can actually see the former unopened road allowance that runs through the properties. That's been stopped up, closed, and sold to the neighboring owners on each side. And the 2 properties on the eastern half there are the parts that require the official plan amendment. The zoning bylaws, much like the previous presentation you just heard, again, are subject to 2 different zoning bylaws: the former Township of Fenland zoning bylaw on the left, the former Village of Fenland Falls zoning bylaw on the right. And these 2 zoning bylaws will each have separate exception zones. And there's an existing exception zone on the Fenland Township side where the home hardware is that permits the use that's there today and would permit the expansion. However, based on their proposal, they're looking to expand it further to the east across that former boundary line. So these 2 zoning amendments will have to, again, speak to each other and treat the boundary between the 2 bylaws as not being a boundary for zoning purposes in terms of treating it like it's 2 separate properties. So they will harmonize, create one zone category essentially, and both of the bylaw provisions will have to speak to each other and ensure that it's a smooth, consistent development across the entire site. Since writing the report, we have received comments from Kawartha Conservation. They have no objection to the official plan amendments or rezoning. There are 4 comments to be addressed. And I have clarified with the planner from Kawartha Conservation that those 4 comments can be addressed through the subsequent site plan process which will be kind of the next step in this development if the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments are approved. They are subject to site plan control, would go through that process, and all of the outstanding issues could be resolved through site plan. Engineering has provided a number of comments as well that are items that can be addressed through the site plan control process. Those comments for both KRCA and engineering have been provided to the proponents so that they can start working on those in preparation for trying to move this development forward. There would be one other application that will be required. They will need a deeming bylaw to consolidate all three properties into one based on the legal descriptions. The residential lots, or at least one of them, is a lot in a plan of subdivision. So they require a deeming bylaw, which is a bylaw that will come straight to council to be approved. The only person that can appeal that deeming bylaw application would be the owner themselves, owner applicant, and we would not anticipate that that would be the case if council approves the bylaws that they're seeking there to consolidate the three properties into one larger property. We have also received comments from a neighboring landowner about three properties to the south. They just want to be kept apprised of the outcome and wanted to know what's going on with this site. I've provided them a copy of the report. I've provided them a copy of the public meeting notice, and have not heard anything further back in terms of support or objection to this application. So I'm not anticipating any public objection to it. Staff are therefore recommending that we go with the staff recommendation would be to refer it back pending any comments from the public, which may need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ian, for that report. Mr. Clark, do you wish to speak to this application?
Yes, there we are. Yes, if I may, only to indicate that the report from Mr. Walker is very thorough and complete, and we have had the opportunity to review and discuss the conservation and the engineering comments. We feel that they certainly can be addressed, and we are more than willing to answer any questions. I would just also acknowledge that Mark Wilson, the manager of this project, and Dave and Nancy Jacket are also available if there are questions for them.
Thanks for that, Bob, and maybe just stay there in case members of committee have any questions. I'll get, so first of all, was there anybody, do you want to have any questions from this members of committee? Mayor Latham?
I do, thank you. Just a quick question for, I guess, Ian. I know you and I have talked, and obviously pending if there's any public input, but it seems that some of the outstanding comments you were waiting for when you wrote this report, we've now received. Any outstanding issues seem to be able to being dealt with as site plan. If we don't get a whole lot of negative feedback through the public process, is there any objection to moving this forward for approval at council instead of referring it back?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the mayor. If there are no public comments or objections to this, I would not object to it moving forward with bylaws for the official plan and zoning. No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from members of committee? Anyone from the public wish to speak to this application? Anyone from the public wish to speak to the application? Did anybody register, Joel?
I believe all that we have on the line right now are David Nancy Jacket and Mark Wilson, if they want to speak.
So we just have, there's nobody from the public, just the owners and Mr. Clark are on the line. So at this time, seeing there's no comments from the public, there's a recommendation in your in our folder here today, and Councillor Vail.
Based on the fact that there's no further public comments, I'd give you a recommendation that this be forwarded to council for approval.
Thank you. Seconded by Jason. Further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for that and your time today. The next item on it is 3.3, David Harding, an application to amend the Township of Henley zoning bylaw. Pardon me? And Mike Barkwell, you can return. Your sentence is over. We're just trying to connect with David Harding here to start with.
Committee, can you hear me?
We can hear you, David. You just don't have any video, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, if you, you can go ahead at this time, David, okay?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a quick clarification to Joel. So are you still operating the PowerPoint? Or is that falling back on staff? Thank you. So the property owner is Dagmar Teubner of a numbered Ontario Incorporation, represented by David McKay of MHBC Planning, Inc. Notice of the application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. All registered property owners within 500 meters of the subject property were provided notice of the application, and a sign was posted on the property by the city's sign company. So provisional consent to sever off a farmhouse deemed surplus to the needs of a farming operation as a result of the consolidation of farmland was granted by the Director of Development Services back in December. A committee can see the green being the retained farmland and the red in the lower right-hand corner being the severed farmhouse that accesses the road network via Highway 35. An agricultural exception 26 zone is proposed for the retained agricultural land. So the purpose of this exception zone is to remove the potential to construct a future dwelling in accordance with our official plan policies, and also to recognize the unique access issue that is present should the farmhouse be severed. The Ministry of Transportation has asked that all future access to the farmland not go through the highway, but instead via the unassumed road allowance on the back, which is known as Robin Road. And through consultation with the city solicitor, there's been an understanding that a property owner of the agricultural lot at that time would be responsible for the road upgrades, but there would be some sort of private maintenance agreement because the city would not be assuming service to whatever portion of Robin Road is upgraded. So that's what the intention of the exception zone is just to recognize the unique maintenance that would have to occur along that section of Robin Road should the owner choose to upgrade it to build agricultural buildings. And then the rural residential type 1 exception 21 zone is proposed for the farmhouse to be severed. And really what the intention of that exception zone is to recognize the residential use of the farmhouse going forward once it is separated from the agricultural parcel, as well as the reduced lot frontage on Highway 35. This is basically a pie-shaped lot, and the minimum frontage normally required in the RR1 zone is 38 meters. Staff respectfully recommends that the committee consider referring the zoning bylaw amendment application to council for approval. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that report, David. Mr. McKay, do you wish to speak to this application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of committee. We have reviewed the staff report and we are supportive of the recommendation. And I don't want to repeat anything that Mr. Harding has said, but I'd be happy to answer any questions committee may have.
Thank you. I'll just remain there. We'll see. Members of the committee, do you have any questions of this application? It's understood that if they want to have any farm buildings, that they may have to bring that road up to a standard. That's understood, is it, Mr. McKay?
Yes, it is. Yes, my client, however, they just want to continue farming that property. They don't have any intentions at this time for any agricultural buildings. However, we understand the issue and we're in agreement with the approach that staff have recommended. should that change and they do wish to build in the future.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak to this application? Anyone wishes to speak to this application? Do we have anybody registered, Joel, to speak to this application?
I believe I only have David McKay here.
I think you're the only speaker, David. So anyways, thanks. What's committee's wishes? Councillor Seymour Fagan?
To forward to council.
Forward to council. The recommendation is there. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconder by Mike Barkwell. Any further discussion? That's carried. Thank you for your attendance today.
Thank you very much, members of the committee. Have a good afternoon.
The next item is David Harding, you're up again. Application to amend the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Joel, if I can just have you advance one slide, please, and keep it there for the time being. Thank you. So this is respecting the municipal addresses of 34 and 44 Royal Cedar Road, as well as a larger vacant agricultural land without a municipal address. So there are 3 properties involved in this particular application. One is Canada Royal Resort Inc., represented by Kai Chen. Now that is the uncolored box that's kind of surrounded by the yellow. And then we also have other property owned by Robert and Elizabeth Ellis and Peter and Robert Walker, which is in the green and the yellow. And then other property that's owned specifically by Robert and Elizabeth Ellis, which is the purple and the orange. I'll get into explaining this color scheme in a little bit. So the notice of the application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. All registered property owners within 500 meters of the lots were provided notice of the application, and a sign was posted by the city sign company at the intersection at Royal Cedar Road and Highway 35. So in terms of what the zoning bylaw is touching for all these properties, it's specific to the yellow, the orange, and the little uncolored Royal Cedar Resort block. But right now we're also having to advertise the green and the purple as being part of the subject lands because the severances that each of these parcels are giving the Royal Resort have not happened yet. One parcel right now, which is owned by the Walkers and the Ellises, is the green and the yellow. There was a severance application previously filed which received provisional consent, which was to transfer the yellow piece to the Royal Resort. And then the other large agricultural parcel owned by the Ellis and the Walkers, sorry, just the Ellises. And that's the purple and the orange. So that parcel is giving the orange piece to the Royal Resort as well. So if we can go to the next slide, Joel, please. So there we have a zoom now of what's going on. So everything that's in colored plus the Royal Resort piece specifically, that's all the zoning work that's proposed out of all these subject lands that you saw in the previous image, because these are the lands that are being consolidated with the Royal Resort parcel. So again, we had 2 lot line adjustments that were previously granted provisional consent, the yellow and the orange, going to the ownership of the Royal Resort. And a condition of the severance were that rezoning occurs. The yellow piece is already zoned C3, which is the same as the resort, which permits a variety of tourist commercial uses. The intent of that condition for rezoning was to address the lot frontage that the Royal Resort would have on the private easement for a right-of-way known as Royal Cedar Road. The orange piece is zoned rural general right now, And zoning is also proposed to be changed on that to recognize the existing parking lot and septic system that is on the property and freeze that use until they can come back at a later date with a comprehensive development proposal. Now, as part of the severance, the city also requested that a holding provision be put across the Royal Resort parcel, the yellow piece, and the orange piece that allowed site plan control to be imposed, which allows the city the ability to request additional studies and more control over the final built form once the Royal Resort has a development proposal. So that is a brief history of how we got to this application today. I can certainly expand upon that for clarification as is needed. So Planning Division has received at last count 23 letters of concern or objection. Most of these originate from the residents on Mason Lane, which are the properties to the south. The topics within the letters may be broken down into the following broad categories. Number one, what expansions are being proposed to the Royal Resort and where? Number two, the dormancy of the resort over the last 5 years and how this translates into a need for an expansion of its operations. Number three, the intensity of the proposed use of the resort and the traffic, noise, and safety impacts both on the land and in the water. Number four, the adequacy of the sewage systems both on the resort and the cottage resort uses around the resort that it is obtaining title to. Number five, tree clearing. Number six, impacts to the habitat and wildlife of Balsam Lake associated with an increase in the intensity of use. Number seven, whether authorization was issued for the works to the resort and its shorelines. And number eight, what I will broadly classify as resort management. But really that's broken down into three separate subtopics, which is who owns the business, the base of operations for the various contractors involved in the site works conducted to date, and the burning of garbage. So at this point, going back to the severance applications, it was viewed as a lot line adjustment between two commercial properties, as well as obtaining title to the tile bed and parking lot lands that are to the east of the resort lands as well. In light of the public comments that have been received since the writing of the staff report, there was only one submitted at that time. Staff does believe it is appropriate for the application to now be referred back to staff for further review, and so that the owner, applicant, and the city may have further discussion with the interested parties, and so respectfully recommends to the committee that it be referred back to staff for these reasons. Due to the revised recommendation, it is the intent of staff today to listen to the public comments and concerns raised, but not respond to questions. Due to the number of parties that have declared interest and the complexity of some of the questions raised, it is staff's opinion that it is more appropriate for an issues list to be compiled for comprehensive response. This issues list can be then examined at a future roundtable meeting between city staff, the owners, applicant, and interested parties. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, David, for that very comprehensive report. And I guess we'll ask at this time if Mr. Chen wishes to speak to this application. You'd like to come back on?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. If you want to proceed, please.
Yes, yes. I heard some of the comments that the neighbor was concerned. I already done few of the comment that Dave just spoke. Few things. The number two, the neighbor is concerned that the real resort it's not opening for the last 4 years. They were like concerned why we cannot open the business, and then we were thinking to expand the resort, right? The reason is in 2016, we first started construction for the real resort. We spent a lot of the money and time and to trying to make the real resort up to date. And then about 1 year later, Rob Yos, which the agriculture land, the landlord, he showed up to me and then speaking to me that we just, at the time, we just recognize that the subject 10, it's not part of the real resort land. It's in the Robert Yos land. So that made us to thinking what is going on. So the city, the building department will not allow us to open the real resort until we purchase the land from Robert. So this is a most major issue over here that holding back the grand opening for real resort. And this dragging us for the last 4 years just to apply the application for the servants and for the zoning application. And this is the reason we're holding back for the last 4 years. We cannot open the real resort without the purchase of this land, period, that's it. So the number 3 and number 4 item that Dave was mentioning about the impact of the real resort, that once they open, once we expand the real resort, my goal for that real resort is trying to reduce the number of the rooms. Originally, real resort, they have 55 rooms there. Right now, I make the application to the building department to decrease to 44 rooms now. So I don't want to make this place so crowded. So I try to reduce much as I can. Also, the traffic and environmental impact is that we have a public health inspector come to do the inspection. We also have to hire those professionals to do studies before we proceed the next application to apply for the expansion. So right now, we are still too early to prepare all those information. We need to get this land so we can open the real resort first. And they also mentioned something about the burning a garbage. I have a pile of the invoice here. We're talking about 100 pages. I hired this garbage bin, almost 100 bins. I have the receipt invoice here. There's no point why I'm burning a garbage. It doesn't make any sense. But it does. For me, I do burn some wood logs for the fire pit, but this is allowed from the fire departments. One day, fire marshal showed up, and then he doing all the inspection for the real resort, and then I asked if it's okay to burn a wood in that fire pit, and he said it's okay. But I don't know why people are saying that burning garbage, since I pay over $1,000 to hire those garbage bins to dump those garbages. And then also most important part is that I believe the concern from the neighbor is they think that I'm gonna build a gigantic or monster things on the resort land, and they worried about that I do something crazy. I try to explain to the city that on the current zone for the real resort zone is current zone C3. I can do a lot of stuff in that zone, but right now I give up my own right. So the city is gonna put to change my C3 zone to C3 exception, and also put the whole simple H simple on my zone. What that means is I don't have any right to do anything anymore until the city approve all the application. So right now I give up all my right. The city will tell me, oh, we need this, we need that. Otherwise, we're not going to approve your application. So this will give the maximum control from the city to control what we're going to do for that land. So that will help the neighbors to protect the neighbor, that we're not going to build something, you know, doesn't make sense to the public, right? So I try to see, I try my best interest is to satisfy the neighbors, satisfy the cities. I'm not gonna do something crazy. I'm willing to talk to them. I'm willing to negotiate with them and see what we can do to reduce that the impact of the result. I think pretty much that is cover everything over here, the topic. So if you wanna have any people wanna speak up next, or?
This is Jane Ellis speaking. I'd like to speak after Mr. Chan, if I might.
Just hold on 1 second, okay, please?
Yep.
We're just going to, we will get to the speakers in due time here. The process, we have to ask members of committee, do they have any questions of the author of the report or Mr. Chen, the applicant at this time? Mayor Latham?
I do, thank you. I have a couple. First to David, the planner, if I might, and then to Mr. Chen there. And thank you, Mr. Chen, for coming and clarifying some of those points. On the diagram that you've got up right now, David, the lands, south of the resort that are yellow, and I know Mr. Chen touched on it, but I just want to clarify for people who are listening that land is currently zoned C3, which is the same zoning as the resort. So they could go ahead and build all sorts of things under tourism on that property, but under this rezoning, we're putting a C3 exception on it with a holding provision so that it'll be under site plan control to give this, so they'll have to get approval from the city for anything they want to do in the future on that particular portion of yellow south of the resort. Is that correct, David?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. The site plan control process will allow the city to request additional studies and a much greater control over other items like parking and lighting, etc., and landscaping.
Thank you. And I guess my next question, David, if you don't mind, can you go back to the one with the purple, the first, all the pretty colors? Thank you. So I talked to a few residents up there yesterday. I came up and visited your property, Mr. Chen. I didn't go too far because you got some no trespassing signs, but I took a quick look just so I could see what we were talking about. I talked to a few residents. There seems to be an understanding or an assumption that from a few that I talked to that this whole purple piece of property is being purchased, and they're talking about trailer parks over by Mason, Mason Lane and everything else. So I just want to clarify that you've got it up there in purple, and I know it was part of the report, so it was a little bit confusing, but the only land that is being added today or being requested right now is that yellow piece south of the resort and the orange block directly behind it, where right now there's the septic and the parking that Mr. Chen touched on earlier. Can you just confirm that, David, that the purple portion is not what we're dealing with, is not what's being contemplated being purchased at this time?
Through the chair, yes, I can confirm that. The only reason why it's showing up right now in that location map is because the severance cannot be finalized until the rezoning occurs.
Okay, thank you. So then my final question, and maybe to Mr. Chen, I'm in support of, I'm excited to see that this resort is moving ahead, Mr. Chen, and we wish you the best of luck. We think this is a huge bonus for Balsam Lake and the whole community. You know, it's been there for a while, and we're glad it's moving forward, and we'll certainly do what we can to help. But one thing I've learned in my time here and dealing with different subdivisions and stuff is communication is key. And, you know, a lot of the emails that we're getting are dealing with a lot of issues that I don't think are relevant to this application, and I think that's from a lack of communication. So I'm in favor of referring this back, because I think, you know, if you can take the time to work with our staff and to work with the residents, that's time well spent to make sure everybody understands what it is you want to do and have that support from your community moving forward, you know, so that everybody wins from this. And I think some of what we're getting is just people are afraid, they're unknown, you know, there's a bit of a misunderstanding of what's taking place there. So I'm a big fan of, you know, a public meeting at your resort or something, and just let, you know, there's no secrets here. Let people know what you're looking to do, get everybody on board with it. And if our staff can, you know, can work through some of the people that there's no point in going through appeals and tying this up at the board for years. Let's get all the information out so everybody understands it up front. And I will certainly support sending this application back till everybody's, we've got clarification. So I just wanted to say that. We've done that before with different developers. It's been very successful. You know, meet with the residents, deal with their concerns, just be upfront with everybody. And I think you'll find that some of these issues go away once everybody understands what it is you're looking to do. So.
On the weekend, most times I will be on the resort to cut the grass. So if anybody want to talk to me, feel free to drop by to talk to me. So I'm always there on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So I'm open door to everybody. Feel free to come.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. That's all for me.
Thank you. Other members of the committee, any questions? To you, Mr. Chen, probably, as Mayor Latham has said, probably would be, whether it's on site or have a meeting, it could be in the Lions Hall in Kobekonk or some hall close by with some boards up with further explanation, or however you choose to do it. But it certainly would clarify a lot of the questions. So anyway, so we're going to go to the, oh, Kathleen, I'm sorry, go ahead, Councillor Fagan.
I just wanted to say thank you to David Harding and to Mr. Chen for clarifying some of these issues, because I think that was the confusion. People had no idea what was going on. It is my ward, so people were very concerned. So if we can keep that dialogue open, like Mayor Latham said, I think it's really important. So thank you.
So just for before we go to the first people of the public, there's a number of people who want to speak to this. We already have a lot of your correspondence. Just a couple things, if you could, we've identified about, David Harding has pointed out about 8 items that are fairly consistent with the neighbors that their concerns. So if you have, speak to them, or if you have further ones, that would be much appreciated. And if you could kind of keep your deputation to 5 minutes, that would even be more appreciated. So anyways, we'll start with the first deputant. Joel?
I think we had Jane Ellis.
Yes, you do.
Okay, go
I hear
ahead.
you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jane.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get my video working. I'm working with an iPad here, I hope everyone can hear me, and my husband, if he chooses to speak as well. I want to thank David for his succinct not condensation, but putting together all of the various concerns that are out there put out by our neighbors. I understand that there is a lot of vehemence and care that something bad is going to happen. And I was absolutely convinced to ask that this be deferred until another meeting. As a matter of fact, I did request that, spoke with Mr. Chen, and he agreed that if that was what we had to do, that was what we had to do. Mr. Holey decided that no, we should go ahead. So here we are. We have an interest in this sale. We have had this as a gentleman's agreement now for 4 years. It's taking a long time. So now perhaps we have to go ahead and hear the comments that people have to make. Other than that, we're going to keep on following in.
Thank you for your presentation. Who's up next?
On my list, I believe Greg Houston is there.
Are you there, Greg?
Hello. Hello, everybody. So I'd be the neighbor immediately to the south of the property in concern. And I guess we've seen applications for, you know, a two-story hotel building with 34 rooms, you know, so we're going from 8 small cottages that have been rented by the same families. I guess the Ellises had rented to them for many years. And, you know, we've had no issues with that, just, you know, quiet families. And, you know, we always liked watching the Royal Resort next door and weddings. But it's at a distance where, you know, my property is so close to this subject property. It's a big concern to us to see a application come through for a 30, I believe it's 34 rooms, 2 stories. Like, this is just, it's just, we can't imagine seeing something like that there. It would just affect our property, the way all the angles of everything work. And, you know, we've got a nice, quiet, beautiful laneway here. These properties are $1 million properties or more. And to see that, like, I just can't imagine what that would do to the value of our property and all the adjacent properties. So we have to see something different here. And, you know, we were really unable to speak at the first meeting, or I guess, sorry, I'm not quite up on the terminology, but the first, was it? The application meeting. We were kind of unable to do that because we were in the middle of purchasing some land for some septic in the back. And it's just, we've been watching what's going on over there. We watched some, you know, concrete restoration. We're in the dock business, marine construction. We've been in business for 32 years in the area here. And just watching some of the things that have been going on over there, we're quite concerned about what's going to happen next door here. So I guess that's really what we have to say. I would love to meet with Kai. We briefly, you know, we haven't really had much communication, just a little hand wave here and there, and seen some of the people working there over the last 4 years. And I mean, we do love to see the place getting fixed. You know, Kai, we're really happy to see that you guys are improving the property. It's just, we're pretty concerned about what you're going to do there when we see a 34 2-story. Like, how do you expect us to welcome that, you know, to such a nice, beautiful part of Balsam Lake here? It's, we're very concerned, Kai. So.
Thank you for your time, and our staff has taken your concerns down, and they'll likely get addressed at a further meeting with the owners and Mr. Chen.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Next one.
We have Karen Henley.
You can go ahead, Karen, if you can hear us.
Yes. Good afternoon, council and staff and other interested parties. This is Karen Henley speaking. I'm going to just do a little bit of history back to the original applications. I received a copy of the 2000 applications in the March of 2019. I had not received any other documents notifying me about those applications before that time. Upon first review of the application submitted, my initial observation was this is a pretty sketchy and incomplete application for such a large development and construction proposal for a luxury, as it read on the application, a luxury 2-story hotel, water park, and other recreational activities. Secondly, where are the supporting documents that one would expect with this type of application? The vagueness of these applications, in my opinion, was unacceptable. So at the time, I submitted an objection to these applications immediately. It was received, my objection was received and formally recorded by the city. Thereafter, I was forced to remove my objection. I had no other option than to withdraw my objection, which I did so. I was assured at the time that the development would be no larger than a 6-villa with, there was no formal applicant number provided to me at that time. I then began to do my own due diligence, and on that, I looked into the developer. You know, what is their experience with development and what is their experience with construction? What is their professional background? And the companies, are they registered as development companies? There is the Royal Resort, and then the ownership is under the name on the application as the Canada Royal Resort Inc. After my due diligence that I completed, I did have further concerns with these applicants. They do not appear to have the experience with such a development, and they appear to be a foreign investment group, in my opinion, and their present construction and renovations that they had been doing to date on the existing Royal Resort is questionable, to say the least. And that would reference back to what was reported by, I guess, other public comments about permits, garbage burning, mattress burning, etc. I'm not confident that this would be a successful outcome for a community if you let these applications proceed any further. I'm not against development. I fully support good, responsible development in our community. The Royal Resort, we've been here for 30 years next to the Royal Resort, and we attended there when it was up and running. We look forward to that happening. I feel that the applicants should be encouraged by the development process to submit accurate and thorough documentation. Not only were these applications missing detailed concepts, the section on the application which defines the proposed use was written in or altered, and I'm not sure it had the landowner's consent, but the landowners did not agree with the proposed, or do not agree with the proposed hotel use submitted on the 2018 applications. For these reasons, I feel that the initial applications and the methods used to stop the public objection, in my opinion, are fraudulent in nature and need to be denied. Finally, this latest stage, the notice of public meeting on the rezoning and bylaw items. Our concerns were submitted with the detailed comments, and we also had further questions, which, thank you, we did receive responses, but our questions aren't completely answered. Without receiving the complete set of answers to the multitude of issues that were being presented, we then received a copy of the staff recommendation letter for recommending approval for the rezoning applications. I don't understand how that can happen before the staff and before the staff has reviewed the concerns from the community. How can they recommend an approval before hearing our concerns? The potential of this, what concerns me is the potential of this public meeting that's being held today, and then council going ahead on the staff recommendation, improving this rezoning and the new bylaw is frightening, to say the least. It has caused a high level of stress and conflict in our local community here. I would like to have the questions to these answers, the answers to these questions, and I would ask that these be provided before any further approvals are issued. I'm requesting that this rezoning application be removed from this committee until the proper due diligence is completed by all parties involved. Understanding what was said at the beginning of this meeting, it sounds like this is going to happen, and I appreciate that fact very much, because I believe that it is extremely important that all parties go back to the table and revisit this entire process that has started in 2018. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your deputation. You were listening, and you know this is not going forward today. The recommendation is to be referred back for a further public meeting.
Yes, correct.
That's correct. Okay.
And just have one comment that was made earlier on the rezoning. I know everyone spoke about adding the H. Could I ask a question? When you add the H to the zoning category, does it still allow for a public process?
Nothing can go forward till the H is removed, and so they're actually going to be having a meeting, and then it has to come back to this forum and it has to be before it even goes to council, and there will be public meetings before the H is removed. But I'll get clarification on that, okay? Just one side, maybe David can clarify that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will do my best to answer that and rely on the manager of planning for additional clarifications. The removal of holding, to my understanding, is still a publicly advertised process, but the only person who can appeal its potential removal at that point is either the owner, or it is the owner. It's basically between the owner and the city at that point to remove that H, because the zoning's been predetermined. But the purpose of imposing that holding provision is to allow there to be more city control, because currently we do not have site plan approval on this property. So that is the intent behind the holding provision.
So just to be clear, what you're telling me is that if that goes through, then with the site plan submission and the uses that are deemed to be approved, the public will not have any input into those definition of uses going forward.
Through the chair. So I think at this point we have to also keep in mind that it's being referred back, and some of these items will be further addressed when there's more consultation that has happened. The holding provision, what that does is it freezes essentially, or puts on hold whatever the permitted activities are on the underlying zone category until the site plan is registered, and any of the supporting documentation that the city needs to see as part of that site plan process. So to answer your question at a very high level, whatever that zoning permits, that zoning is there. The holding provision, that becomes, the lifting of that holding provision becomes the private process between the city and the owner. So there's no public consultation to lift the H or to navigate that site plan control process.
And so also the present uses today on that land of C3, which we discussed, are still there. Has that been identified exactly what those uses are to this meeting?
I don't think I have not orally articulated it. So the C3 zone permits a variety of tourist commercial uses. Off the top of my head, that is hotel, motel, restaurant. I believe there's also some sort of pleasure craft rental business and restaurant uses that are also permitted.
And a marina, I believe, was one of those uses.
Okay, so I see it's, yes, marina is. Thank you, Joel. So those are the permitted uses of the C3 zone that are on the overhead now.
So just to clarify, these are the permitted uses on the property as it stands now?
Yes, Mr. Chair, on the Royal Resort lands currently, and that portion of the property that was highlighted in yellow at the beginning of the presentation. Both of those are zone C3.
Right. And when were those, I mean, understanding, when would those uses have been established? Like, are we talking 50 years ago, or do we know the date of the zoning of those lands? Like when that would have been established? My question and my concern is, today in 2020, those lands that we are talking about, I don't know. I mean, I think we need to be very careful and very cautious as to what we permit the use of those lands to be, especially the ones that are, anytime they're abutting are the shoreline water. So my concern is with this rezoning application is that if you move forward with putting a hold on it and you remove, we haven't seen the public, the community hasn't seen the site plans. And if you're gonna not rezone it with a specific use, taking into account the sensitivity of the location of that C3 lands, then, you know, I think we're, you know, like that needs to be considered. Redefining the uses of that specific piece of land to protect the community and all the, that would eliminate, I believe, a lot of these concerns.
Well, staff is listening today, and we have taken your concerns into consideration, and they will address that at the public meeting, and they will get further dialogue. And my guess is originally it was the old Somerville zoning bylaw and Victoria County in the day, but I can't speak for certainty on that. But those questions will all be answered by our staff. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Who's next?
I have Rob Jardine.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment on the application for a zoning bylaw amendment on Royal Resort lands. We would also like to acknowledge the assistance of David Harding in the Planning Department, who has provided prompt and thorough response to our initial queries on this matter. The mandate of the Balsam Lake Association is to protect the legacy of the lake and to maintain and improve the security and enjoyment of lakefront and nearshore property owners. A key element of this mandate is to monitor development activities that may impact Balsam Lake. As such, we have a keen interest in any of the plans for additional development for Royal Resort lands beyond what it is already in place. As indicated by Mr. Harding, the applications have not yet provided any detailed plans for additional development of these lands in support of the rezoning request. This is a concern to us for the following reasons. The effectiveness of a public consultation phase is compromised, in our view, if a concept plan has not been provided upon which Balsam Lake property owners can reasonably assess the potential impact, either positive or negative, on the lake. Number two, there may be no other opportunity for the public to provide input on the development plan prior to its approval by the city. As explained to us by Mr. Harding, an additional public consultation process will be triggered only if Royal Resort owners request a further zoning change on the rear lands closer to the highway. However, given the existing and approved uses of the rear lands, including parking and septic tile beds, it is conceivable to us that the Royal Resort owners will find these existing uses sufficient for their development plans and will therefore not need to request further zoning changes, thereby eliminating the need for further public consultation. Number three, the existing commercial recreation C3 zone permitted uses provide a wide latitude of development that could be detrimental to the lake shore and the shoreline health. Examples include no limits on maximum occupancy of a hotel, minimum water setback of only 50 feet, maximum height of 36 feet, which could accommodate a 3-floor hotel, minimum side yard of 20 feet, meaning the hotel could be sited 20 feet next to an adjacent cottage property. Given these concerns, we respectfully request that the advisory committee defer the decision on the zoning bylaw until a detailed concept plan is provided by the Royal Resort owners and made available for public review and comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation, and our staff has taken your comments into consideration, and I think most of them have been addressed, but thank you for yours as well. Joel, do we know who's up next?
I believe we had Stacy Gateman. She was with Greg, unless she wanted to speak separately. I don't believe I have anyone else, unless someone would like to turn on their camera.
Stacy, did you wish to speak on your own?
I would just like to say thank you to everybody, especially David, who's been very forthcoming and helpful in clarifying some of our concerns. I think everything that we are concerned has been touched on, except I have one more question about the purple area on that drawing. Is changing the zoning setting a precedent for the further development of that land in the future? Should we be concerned about that?
I'll just get David to clarify that, okay? David, did you wish to speak to that?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So no, there is no precedent here. We're not touching the zoning of the lands in purple. So there is no precedence that's being established.
All right, I would say that my concerns are being dealt with, which were mostly the lack of supporting documentation on the applications. And I'm happy and content to hear that there's a lot of people on board to push this back and gain some more information before a decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to make your presentation today, and hopefully a lot of the questions will get answered at the meeting. Anyone else wish to?
Mr. Chair, could I make a comment?
Yes, go ahead, Chris.
So just to clarify a couple of things, certainly in terms of our process, we've, as you know, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, debated a number of times about the efficacy of going straight from the public hearing to council. And certainly there is a desire to not hold up processes such that if we get to the public hearing and we find that there isn't any opposition and that people are satisfied that all the issues have been addressed, that we can carry on to council. When staff are writing their report, they need to put a recommendation in. So if they put the recommendation in that the application should go forward, that doesn't mean that we as a committee can't change our mind once we've heard the comments from the committee. So I wouldn't say that because we've put a recommendation into the report to start with that it's to move on to council, that we're tied to that. It's just to say that, we still have the opportunity once we've heard from the public to hold it back and do what we did today. So it's not like it's a slam dunk because we made that recommendation. That recommendation can be changed. So the second thing I wanted to just talk about was the connection between the site plan and the rezoning. And I think just to be fair to applicants generally, and I'm certainly a supporter of getting applications in that have the zoning and the site plan together, because certainly that provides the public with an opportunity to see what is being proposed on the property and to be able to comment on it. But playing devil's advocate from the applicant's perspective, it's a lot of time, energy, money, professional drawings, surveys, architectural drawings that need to be done in order to get a site plan done. So if you're requiring all of that information at the same time as the rezoning, the applicant is risking not getting the rezoning and having spent all of that money and time on those detailed drawings and studies and things. So it is a bit of a chicken and an egg thing. The applicant wants to know that the zoning's in place before they put all that money, time, effort, studies, architectural drawings, surveys, which could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, if they don't even know they've got the zoning. So I certainly understand the concerns from the public, but I just wanted to point out that sort of the timing of things and how problematic it can be for the applicant to be putting both the full site plan application in along with the rezoning application.
Thanks very much for that, Chris. Go ahead, Mayor Latham.
I just have a follow-up question, if you don't mind, to David, and it's just for clarification. I guess I'm a little, well, I'm confused on a lot of things, but the one part of it that one of the deputants mentioned was their concern behind their residents for an application for a 34-room, two-story, I don't know, hotel or motel or something, and, you know, adjacent to Masonland. I'm assuming they mean on that yellow portion south of the current resort. And then I'm hearing from others that they're concerned because we're rezoning, but there's no application on what's being built there. So, David, can you confirm, does the city have any application for any kind of building proposal at this time on record?
Through the chair to the mayor. No, we don't. I understand that there was some verbiage that was included in the original severance application that explained very generally the justification for obtaining title to the yellow, but that was the end of it. We have received no further drawings or development applications.
Okay, so that's great. And so perhaps maybe as part of this public process moving forward and clarification then, even through Mr. Chen, then, you know, a little bit of idea for everybody on what they're looking at, you know, from the rezoning of this property, what are their long-term plans there? And again, I go back to the communication goes a long way moving forward. So it was good to hear everybody's comments, and I'm certainly happy to make the recommendation to refer it back to staff if that's what you're looking for, Mr. Chair.
Yes, we have a mover, seconded by Councillor Seymour Fagan, and that's going to be referred back to staff, and they will come forward with a schedule, I believe, for if they're going to have a public meeting and meet with our staff if that's going to happen in the future here. So, anyways, thanks very much for all those that took time for your deputations today.
Actually, can I just amend that motion? I think just based on what's going on, perhaps you keep saying another public meeting, and this is the public meeting, so unless the application changes, we don't want to give the impression there's another public meeting. We're going to refer it back for public clarification, and if I'm speaking out of term, maybe Richard or Chris can clarify, but I would actually amend my motion that this be referred back to staff, and when it does come back, that another public meeting be held before, you know, the recommendation goes forward to council. So I would like to make that part of it just because of the interest here. Are you okay with that, Kathleen?
Do you have any clarification from Richard, or is there any problem with that?
Through the chair, no, there isn't. I mean, we can definitely have a subsequent public meeting the next time this comes forward again. That does happen from time to time, just to provide additional input points for the public. Given that we've had a lot of concerns raised here, I think it's a perfectly appropriate recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mayor Latham and Councillor Seymour Fagan. Further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone today. The next item on our agenda is Kent Stainton, an application from the Township Mariposa zoning bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report is associated with file number D06-2020-012, which is located at 1220 Highway 7 in Mariposa Township. The owner of the property is Les Davidson, represented by Doug Carroll of DC Planning Services Incorporated. Notice of the application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. All registered property owners within 500 meters of the lot were provided notice of the application, and one sign was posted at the entryway to 1220 Highway 7 by the city's sign company. The zoning bylaw amendment application relates to a condition of provisional consent, development file D03-2019-020, which a decision was rendered in December of 2019, whereby the agricultural land to be severed is to be rezoned to prohibit residential uses and to set out specific development standards. The severed lands will be consolidated with a non-abutting farm parcel to the east, which is divided by an unopened road allowance. To acknowledge the existing residential and agricultural support related uses and to set out specific development standards, The retained lands are to be rezoned to a rural general exception zone category. Access to and from the severed land is to be attained over the retained lands via an easement that was provisionally granted through a consent application, which was known as Consent Application D03 2019-029, which ran concurrently with the severance application. I'm not sure if I'm screen sharing right now. Joel, can you go to the next slide, please? The application does not conflict with the 2020 provincial policy statement and the 2019 growth plan for Greater Golden Horseshoe, as both documents encourage prime agricultural areas to be protected for long-term use, and all types, sizes, and intensities of agricultural uses and normal farm practices shall be promoted and protected in accordance with provincial standards. The proposal also conforms to the prime agricultural designation policies of the Lindsay official plan, as agricultural land shall be protected from fragmentation, development, and land uses unrelated to agriculture. One of the objectives of the official plan is to support farming operations as an important component of the economy, a source of employment, and a way of life for many rural residents. Staff is proposing a draft zoning bylaw that rezones the severed lands to agricultural exception 35, with the exception numbers provided after the submission of the report, to prohibit residential uses and recognize a decreased minimum lot area and reduced minimum lot frontage. The retained lands will be rezoned rural general exception 5 to acknowledge the agricultural support related uses on the property, prohibit the housing of livestock and animal husbandry within the buildings on the property, and recognize a decreased minimum lot area. Joel, if you could go to the next slide, please. Since the writing of the report, comments have been received from Engineering Division, Building Division, the Agricultural Officer of the Economic Development Division, and the Community Services Department, and they have no objections to the proposal. Staff respectfully recommends the committee consider referring the zoning bylaw amendment application to council for approval. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ken, for that. Doug, do you wish to speak to this application? Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the report that Mr. Stainton has put together for you. It's comprehensive, covers all the points. The questions I did have, he has answered in his presentation to you. The owner and his family have operated the repair and sales and service of farm equipment on this property since the 1960s. And if the bylaw is approved, it would allow for the third generation of Davidsons to continue to do so on this property. The owner has also entered into an agreement of purchase and sale with the owner of the abutting farm, the 100 acres to the east, on the east side of the unopened road allowance between the two properties. If this application is approved by council, they will be able to finalize that agreement of purchase and sale. We have no other issues, and we agree with the recommendation in the staff report. I'm available to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Doug. Members of committee, do you have any questions of the author of the report or Mr. Carroll, the applicant? Seeing none, looks like it's very thorough. What's the committee's right? Councillor Vale? As printed, seconded by Jason. So that, oh, sorry. Anybody from the public wish to speak to this application? Anyone from the public wish to speak to the application? Did we have anybody registered, did we, Joel? No, we didn't have anybody. Yeah, yeah. We didn't have anybody registered. So anyways, so members of the committee, time for the vote. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just okay. Okay, the next item is Mark LaHaye, but I think maybe Richard is filling in for him. The application of the this one, the White Rock, this will be 3.6. Application to amend the Township Mariposa zoning bylaw.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair. An application has been submitted by Bernard Sand and Gravel to permit a quarry operation on subject lands located at 1095 White Rock Road in the Township of Mariposa, just northwest of Oakwood. The application proposes a quarry operation within the existing licensed area. Does not propose to expand the limit or the amount of extraction, but just proposes the quarrying operation of the limestone that they have now hit in some parts of the quarry, as well as they request recyclable storage area as a permitted use. The application was circulated to all property owners within 500 meters, and signage was put on the property frontage by the city sign company, advertising the public meeting. The site is currently accessed through an existing haul route on White Rock Road. The existing driveway access on White Rock Road will continue to operate as the haul route for the proposed quarry operation, and therefore no additional driveways will be proposed, nor changes to any haul routes proposed either. DM Wills is the applicant for the subdivision, and I believe they're in attendance at this meeting as well. As previously stated, the operator has hit limestone, and they feel that the resource is significant and worthy of extraction. As a result, they've submitted the rezoning application because the current zoning in Mariposa only allows for sand and gravel operations and not for quarrying operations. Typically, we don't have any quarries in that part of our community. They're sort of tend to be more northern phenomenons. The extraction of the limestone will require some drilling and blasting. In support of the application, were submitted a number of background studies, fairly substantial, planning justification report, a summary statement under the Aggregate Resources Act, environmental impact study, stage 1 and stage 2 archaeological study, hydrogeological report, noise study, blasting study, and the Aggregate Resources Act site plan sets, which show the existing features, the pit operational site plan, the quarry operational site plan, and the progressive final rehabilitation site plan. With respect to provincial policy, the proposed application is supported by the growth plan. Obviously, this type of use is directed to rural areas, and Section 229 of the growth plan allows this to happen for both pit and quarry operations. Supportive of Section 422 of natural heritage systems. There don't appear to be any impacts on those systems. There are also no negative impacts on surrounding agricultural uses, which deals with Section 426 of the growth plan. 427 relates to cultural heritage preservation. The archaeological assessment did not identify the properties having any cultural heritage value. Section 428 basically deals with the protection of mineral aggregate resources, and this proposal meets those requirements. In addition, there are policies in the growth plan for progressive rehabilitation, which are being proposed through this application. As a result, the application appears to conform with the growth plan. Similar policies are contained in the provincial policy statement, although they sort of go more towards the protection of mineral aggregate resources and having the availability of these close to market, the protection of significant natural heritage features and ecological functions, protection of groundwater and surface resources, operational design to ensure that there are no adverse impacts on adjacent sensitive lands. A review of the application would suggest that this proposal does meet most of those policies. And once we get all of the relevant background studies peer reviewed, as well as the ensuring that we get all the remaining comments in, it would appear that conformity or consistency is approved. The official plan designates the subject property as aggregate, which allows for sand and gravel operations as well as quarrying. It also allows accessory uses such as crushing, screening, washing, stockpiling, as well as maintenance and office facilities. And it also does the policies will become supportive as well of accessory uses. The official plan also requires that the appropriate studies be submitted to ensure that the impact of the proposed operation is acceptable. The city has peer reviewed the environmental impact study, the hydrogeological study, the blasting study, and the noise study. And I believe that all of the impacts have been deemed acceptable, and any comments that were required by our peer review consultants have been incorporated into the revised studies. We are still awaiting for the noise study to be finalized. Once that is finalized and once we get all the agency comments in, then conformity with the official plan should be demonstrated. We will also be providing comments on the site plans that were submitted under the Aggregate Resources Act, and ensure that any required comments and recommendations are included in the site plans. So this typically deals with anything that could be related to hours of operation, operations, or any sort of environmental impacts that are found to be an issue. Moving on to zoning compliance. Obviously, they have applied for a rezoning application to allow the quarrying operation. They would also like to add storage for reclaimed materials. And these include asphalt, concrete, and brick that may be imported onto the site and temporarily stored. The proposal aligns with the city's strategic plan by meeting the healthy environment strategic goal as it protects water quality and natural features and functions while managing aggregate operations. At this time, we have not received all of the circulated agency comments. We have received a couple of comments, but we still need to get the remaining comments. We also have to finalize the remaining peer review for the noise study. So on that basis, staff would respectfully recommend that the matter be referred back to staff for further processing and finalizing all outstanding issues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks very much, Richard, for that report. I see somebody there from DM Wells, if you wish to speak to this application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, as well as the mayor and staff. Daryl Ty from DM Wills, previously with Landmark Associates. I appear before you on behalf of Jim Bedard, owner and operator of Bedard Sand and Gravel, aka White Rock Pit. We also have with us Mr. Dennis Simmons, the project manager. He and Mr. Bedard are logged on together, as well as various technical members of our project team. In order to augment some of the comments offered by Mr. Hawley, I'll attempt to be brief. The total area of the subject property is approximately 74 acres, and the existing operation, pit and gravel operation, is currently under a Class A aggregate extraction operation below the water table. The entire property is a portion, the extraction area of the property is less than the total area of the property, being approximately 58 acres. And there's a current maximum tonnage extraction of 907,000 tons per year. The pit has existed on this site, Mr. Chairman, since 1961. It was formally licensed in 1970. Of the existing allowable extraction area being approximately 58 acres, only 26.6 acres have currently been disturbed, which is less than 50%. A site-specific amendment to this bylaw, 9407 for Mariposa, would be specifically to request 2 additional permitted uses, one being quarry operations and one being recyclable storage area. Approval of this bylaw, should the committee and council agree, would facilitate an ARA application, Aggregate Resources Act application, for a Class 1 and 2 aggregate license, which otherwise, without the zoning, MNRF would not issue the new license. The maximum permitted annual tonnage will remain unchanged at 907,000 per year. The recognized extraction area for the quarrying component would actually be less, of being capped at approximately 48 acres, which would then allow for planned rehabilitation and the required setbacks. Extraction of the limestone will involve drilling and blasting, as Mr. Hawley indicated, and hence the various technical studies have been submitted. The existing entrance and use of the established haul road would continue, and the current number of truck trips annually or daily will remain unchanged, given the maximum extraction allowed. Together with requisite technical studies, our comprehensive planning analysis has confirmed that the subject application would firstly, and we agree with Mr. Hawley's assessment, maintain consistency with the 2020 PPS, would conform to all relevant policies of the growth plan, and finally would demonstrate conformity with the relevant policies of the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan. In our opinion, the approval of the bylaw would represent good planning. The site is already zoned M3. The proposed amendment is specific to the range of permitted uses. And although our client is anxious to obviously proceed, we have reviewed the staff report together with ongoing communications with staff. And we therefore concur with the recommendations of staff in terms of referring this application back to staff in order to complete the circulation and commenting process. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman, subject to any questions. Thank you for hearing our application.
Thank you, Mr. Tai, for your deputation. Members of committee, do you have any questions of Richard or Daryl at this point? Mike, go ahead.
Mr. Teague, I just have a question. The noise report was done in 2019, February the 5th, 2019. Your hydrology report was done in 2018. The archaeological assessment 2018, and these have not been peer reviewed now. Is this unusual to take almost 2 years to peer review studies?
Through the chair, the varying dates of technical reports reflect the length of time that it takes to complete these various reports, but also the application to the city for the requested rezoning was not submitted until all the reports were completed. That application was not filed with the City of Kawartha Lakes until December 2019. So the peer review process does not commence until the city receives the application and deems it complete.
Thank you. No further questions from members of the committee. Anyone registered to speak to this, Joel, from the public?
We have a number of the associated consultants that are available. I have Dennis, Mandy, Ray, and Ross.
I seeing there's no questions. I trust that members of the committee don't need to hear from the other consultants. Have any further questions? Anyone else from members of the public wish to speak to this application? Anyone else watching wish to speak to this application? Seeing none, there's a recommendation, I believe, that it get referred back to staff. Councillor Vale, seconded by Jason Willick. Further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for your presentations today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Moving right along, the next application, I believe Richard's handling again, is the Village of Bob Cajun bylaw. You're up, Richard.
Good afternoon again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application by Marshall Holmes to a revised application for 48 townhouse dwelling units in a condominium format. The property is on Lakewood Crescent in the Village of Bob Cajun. Again, notice of the public meeting was circulated to all public property owners within 120 meters, and a sign was posted on the front of the property. There was an original public meeting on November 8th, 2017, and at that point in time, the application was slightly different. The original application was for 7, or I believe 9 single detached units and 24 semi-detached units. That application was referred back. At that time, it was a zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision, and draft plan of condominium. The owners have revised the application somewhat to increase the number of units and go to 48 townhouse units. The proposal would have access from Lakewood Crescent, and no access is proposed from Austin Boulevard. Joel, can you? All right, so on the north side is Lakewood Crescent, and Austin Boulevard is on the east side of the property here. Okay, thanks. So that's the proposed site plan, which shows the development. So there would be one road coming into the property from Lakewood Crescent, and that would service all of the dwelling units at this time. The proposal would be serviced by municipal water, municipal storm sewer, and municipal sanitary sewer. So it would have full servicing. The revised application, there were a number of revisions to the existing documents submitted. One, planning justification. There was also an urban design analysis submitted, karst topography assessment, phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessment, a stage 1 and stage 2 archaeological assessment, a building design work, which included building elevations and floor plans, topographic plan, concept plan and condominium plans, traffic impact study, and a functional servicing report. With respect to provincial policies, the proposal would support all the relevant policies of the growth plan. Obviously, this directs development into urban areas, uses full municipal services, and provides a range and mix of housing options. Therefore, the applications appear to conform with the policy of the growth plan. The provincial policy statement 2020. The proposal supports section 1.1, managing and directing land use to achieve efficient and resilient development and land use patterns. The development again uses full municipal services, directs development to urban centers, and provides a range and mix of housing. The proposal also supports section 2 and 3 of the provincial policy statement with respect to natural heritage features and natural hazards by keeping the proposal away from those aspects. Subject to confirmation from all the relevant department and agencies, the application would appear to be consistent with the provincial policy statement. From an official plan perspective, the County of Victoria plan remains in place because the Bobcaygeon secondary plan is under appeal. Within the urban designation, a wide variety of uses are permitted, including residential uses. While the low density development should be the predominant form of development, there are also policies that permit medium density. Our assessment of the proposal indicates that the density is well within the medium density policies. Medium density policies are 35 units per hectare, and the proposed density of the development is 29 units per hectare. The county plan also has policies to encourage affordable housing. At this point in time, we haven't had any information from the applicant to demonstrate whether or not a portion of the development would be considered affordable or not. However, the proposal does meet all of the other requirements of and policies of the official plan. The property is currently zoned general industrial M2 under the Village of Bobcaygeon zoning bylaw. Obviously, they will need a zoning bylaw amendment to deal with all the aspects of the townhouse development. So lot size, development setbacks, lot coverage, frontage, etc. The proposal aligns with the city's strategic plan from a number of perspectives. It provides for new housing opportunities to attract new residents to the city of Kawartha Lakes. So it aligns with the vibrant and growing economy portion of the plan. It also aligns with the healthy environment priorities by providing low impact development techniques as part of the stormwater solution. We have had a number of comments submitted in the last few days by various abutting landowners. There are some of the comments attached to the report. I won't go through all of the comments. They relate to, there's concerns related to traffic, related to access onto Lakewood Crescent, as well as visibility. There are concerns with osprey nesting in the area, and there are some concerns with the development from a policy perspective. We have all of those comments, and we will be reviewing them, and we will be providing responses. We will also be providing those comments to the applicant for their review and comment as well. The application was circulated to a number of commenting agencies for review. We don't have all of the comments back, so from that perspective, we don't know what all of the comments are. So from that perspective, we would respectfully request that the application be referred back to staff for further processing. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Richard. At this time, I would ask if Tom, if you wish to speak to this application.
I do. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tom DeBoer with TD Consulting. I just want to thank Richard for the lengthy sort of response to this application. We understand that there's a little bit of work to do with regards to waiting for responses and comments, and we can appreciate that due to the complexity of the file. In addition to that, some of the additional comments that have been received were shared with our office, and we have made contact with some of the members of the public just for clarification. The two things that keep coming up are with regards to the hydro on the property as well as the osprey nest. The osprey nest was attempted to be relocated by Hydro One. It had nothing to do with the development at all. It was actually a Hydro One initiative. And we have been in constant communication with them. They assure us that the balance of the hydro relocations that were in concert with the neighboring properties, one being Forbes Pool, have now been resolved, and that they're going to be relocating the hydro away from the development site along with the osprey nest this coming fall. Aside from that, there are some other comments that we did receive regarding landscape constraints and the beautification of the property. Obviously, those details don't come out until we get into the further application processes with the site plan. And other than that, we are looking forward to the balance of the comments coming from the respective agencies. And we look forward to working with the city to move this project forward. And if there's any questions, please feel free to let me know.
Thank you very much, Tom, for that report. Members of the committee, questions of the applicant. Go ahead, Councillor Fagan.
Actually, it's for Richard. Richard, what agencies are we waiting on? Because this has been 5 months.
I haven't had a chance to review the file to take a look at all the different agencies. I suspect we're probably looking for I believe it's engineering comments, I think KRCA as well, among others, but I don't know all of the different agencies. I think we've only received one agency comment back from the building division to date, so I would suspect there's probably 4 or 5 that we're waiting on.
Okay, I'm just wondering if we can expedite this because it has been a while, and I know that this project's been waiting, and there's a lot of people who've purchased the homes and are already selling their homes. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can get things turned around a little quickly.
Certainly, we can follow up with the agencies that have yet to submit comments and ask them to put it on the top of their list.
Thank you. And Tom, does that make sense to you?
Yes, absolutely it does. Like I said, there's still a few things that we need to just straighten out in terms of the review process. We've actually initiated our consultant group already in light of this lack of approval or waiting for comments to actually motivate everybody right into the detailed design stage of the process. We feel that this is appropriate, understanding that if there was minor revisions, we could accommodate them, but at least we're trying to push forward the full application to move it right through to site plan as quickly as possible.
Thank you for those comments. I believe we have any further questions, members of the committee? Seeing none, we have some people lined up to speak, I believe. Joel?
I believe we have Russ Phillips available.
Go ahead,
hello to
Mr. Phillips.
Hello to the chair and committee. Hello?
You're on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter. My wife, Judy, and myself, we reside at 71 Mill Street, which is approximately 50 feet away from the intersection of Lakewood Crescent and Mill Street and Riverside Drive. I've been in talks with Joseph Kelly of the city since 2016 regarding the recommendation of a stop sign at Lakewood Drive and the intersection of both Mill Street and Riverside Drive. That's been 4 years of communications to try and get this sign. Now with the proposal of the 48 townhomes, it's going to have a great impact of that intersection. Lakewood Drive, we get cars going around that corner at 50 and 60 kilometers an hour on a 90-degree turn onto Mill Street. No matter how many times I check to the right while I'm exiting my driveway, I'm still getting cars coming up behind me as I enter onto Mill Street. That's my recommendation.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Phillips, and I see Mr. Hawley has taken your comments under advisement there, and I'm sure Mr. Kelly will work on the warrants for the stop sign.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Do we have another speaker, do we, Joel?
I don't believe so at this time.
Okay. Does anyone else from the public wish to speak to this application? Does anyone else from the public wish to speak to this application? Seeing nobody dialing in, what's the recommendation from committee? It's to refer it back to staff for a quick turnaround and get the rest of the reports in. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Seymour Fagan. Moved by Mayor Latham, second by Councillor Seymour Fagan. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And I believe our final one today is a memorandum from Anna Kalina, proposed amendment 1 to a place to grow, plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and proposed the lands need methodology. Anna, you're up. There you are.
Good afternoon, members of the committee and chair. Further to the July PAC meeting, where I described the changes to the PPS 2020 and brought up proposed amendment to a place to grow and the proposed land needs assessment methodology, we bring to your attention further information about the proposed changes to those two documents and the associated planning comments submitted to the province. The proposed changes, should they be implemented, would have a direct impact on the city's growth management strategy exercise and how and where the city will grow in the future. There are a couple of changes that are being proposed. One is an update to Schedule 3. Schedule 3 is a table that identifies distribution of population and employment in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, including providing those numbers for the city of Kawartha Lakes. The province procured the services of Hemson Consulting to produce an updated Schedule 3 based on the most recent Statistics Canada and CMHC data, as well as assumptions based on the latest economic and demographic trends and feedback from the advisory and technical groups in which our planning staff participated to provide a local perspective on the local trends. Also, the province is proposing to extend the planning horizon from 2041 to 2051 and forecast population and jobs in accordance with the background report prepared by Hemson. The planning division staff are supportive of the proposed horizon as it will facilitate long-range planning. And we believe as a slower growth municipality, it would make it easier to coordinate land use and infrastructure planning. The proposed amendment also proposes 3 growth outlooks proposed to 2051, one of which will be selected. One of them is titled Reference Growth Forecasts, and the other 2 are high and low growth scenarios. The reference forecast represents the most likely future growth outlook, whereas the high and low growth scenarios illustrate possible growth under a set of assumptions. I want to emphasize that the province is proposing that the selected forecasts be treated as minimals. So what that means is if high growth scenario is selected, then we will need to treat the prescribed people and jobs as minimals. As it relates to the city, however, the assumptions across the 3 scenarios create minimal changes in population and jobs. Therefore, we do not express any strong preference in our comments for any of the 3 growth outlooks. Now, as it relates to the LNA, or Land Needs Assessment methodology, the changes focus on simplifying the process. For context, the in effect LNA methodology that was issued in May 2018 is about 130 pages long. Now, the proposed LNA has been boiled down to just a couple of pages and provides only the minimum steps that municipalities are required to take in order to complete their growth management exercises. And we're supportive of this approach. I mentioned in the last PAC meeting that municipalities must conform with the provincial policies by July 1st, 2022. The province is not proposing to change this date. As you may note from our comments, Planning Division is requesting the province to extend this date for a number of reasons. First, the Schedule 3 and LNA, as I mentioned, are critical components to starting our growth management exercise, yet they're still subject to changes. Secondly, the pandemic has implications for the city budget and therefore may also affect our policy projects. And thirdly, the provincial election in June 2022 may affect ministry staff from being able to make approvals or decisions closer to the deadline. That said, the province appears to be supportive of a phased approach to conformity, and this would be Planning Division's preferred approach. So instead of a single amendment to approve a new official plan, Planning Division staff would bring forward multiple amendments that may be more digestible to the public and decision makers, and may set out policy direction quicker than having to wait for the entire process to conclude. At this time, we're seeking further clarity from the provincial staff on the timing and the process for phasing. And as it relates to the proposed changes, we will continue to monitor any communication from the province to guide our growth management exercise, and we'll provide you with updates accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. When you mentioned the amendments coming forward, do you have a general time frame when you think that those amendments might be coming forward?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We have not been informed if there's any proposed time frame for when these amendments may come into effect.
And just a further question, I was talking to Richard last week, well, this week, I guess it was, a little earlier, and I believe he said he's meeting with the ministry next week to have a discussion about the impact, or maybe you're meeting with them too, I'm not sure. Is that meeting still on, or you hope to meet with them, either you or Richard, or?
As I'm aware, this meeting is being held or scheduled for this Friday.
Thank you. Members of the committee, any questions of the author of the report? Seeing none, is this just for information or just to receive?
Yes.
Councillor Vale, seconded by Kathleen. Any further discussion on it? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for that report, Anna. And thank you much for Chris and Richard hanging in for the afternoon. We'll, I believe that concludes our meeting for today. Can I get a motion to adjourn? By Jason and Mike. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much.